Now in our last episode, the Pet Detective team went to Las Vegas, Nevada to help Reverend Rochester find his lost Elvis impersonator. And when the Pet Detectives returned back to the feed store / office, Polly Opossum informed our team that an old friend of Pepe's, Mr. Pickles, had called for help. Now Mr. Pickles, who is from Dill City, Idaho, and he is a real pickle who performed as a clown years ago as America's #1 pickle clown. But due to a circus-style mishap in Ohio, Mr. Pickles' career took a nosedive. It all happened around the time Mr. Pickles' career in TV appearances, acting jobs, and personal appearances started to slow down. So Mr. Pickles came up with what he thought was a brilliant idea. He would try and set the world record for throwing a carrot, like a javelin, in Ohio as a pickle. Now I know what you're thinking. I never knew there was a record for that. And it's a pretty narrow scope for a world record. And you would be right. And that was Mr. Pickles' plan all along. Mr. Pickles was sure he would own the carrot throwing record at the end of the day. Now with the TV news cameras and local celebrities from the good state of Ohio were there to witness this historic event, along with the Goodyear blimp high in the sky. Mr. Pickles really could throw carrots fast and far. And now, with the best game face on, he stepped up to the line and threw that carrot like a rocket. However, he didn't calculate windage and elevation and the height and distance of the Goodyear blimp. The carrot was on its way to setting the record until it hit the Goodyear blimp, piercing the side, bringing the blimp slowly down to the ground, along with Mr. Pickles' career. The only thing Mr. Pickles learned that day was how much a Goodyear blimp cost. So back to Dill City, Idaho, to the Pickle family farm. He was out of work, penniless, and trying to figure out a way to make a living. Oh, now where's little Thomas and Ruger? Well, after they both lovingly made their mom a Valentine/birthday cake and unknowingly demolished their mom's sparkling clean kitchen, their dad told them the party isn't over until the guys finish cleaning up their kitchen back to its former glory. And they did do their best. Then Thomas and Ruger were off to their Grandma Debbie's and Grandpa's ranch to help disc the weeds down in the field. Thomas was on the tractor in a flash after he had checked all the fluids and was soon in the field disking all the weeds under. Ruger was supposed to be weed eating up around the house and the barn, but Grandma Debbie was baking a carrot cake, and poor Ruger could not stay focused on his job. Soon Thomas and Ruger did finish up their jobs and were all able to enjoy a tall glass of milk and a fresh piece of carrot cake. Good things come to those who work and wait. Now back to Mr. Pickles. Now he did try to revive his career. He became a record producer. He produced a young singer called Pepe and his backup singers called the Village Pets. They had a song that started to become a hit called the SPCA and started a dance craze. But a group called the Village People came out with a song called the YMCA, and it put an end to Pepe and the Village Pets and Mr. Pickles' careers. But that is how Mr. Pickles heard about the Pet Detectives, and he needed their help to start a new business and get it up and running. A campground in Dill City, Idaho, on the Pickle family farm. But the problem is that it's right on the Canadian border, and on the farm no one really wanted to go and camp there, in a cow field. And next door to him in Canada were his main competition, the Canadian Clown Company. Now they are famous in the clown community for introducing the big red shoes that clowns wear all over the world. One day a delivery truck broke down in front of the Canadian Clown Company camp, and they helped the driver fix his truck and get him back on the road. So he paid them with some very large red shoes. And being on a very tight budget, the clowns gladly accepted and started wearing them, and they were a hit. The problem was their feet eventually grew to fit the very large clown shoes, so now they have to wear these big red shoes. Then there was a problem that happened to affect both Mr. Pickles and the Canadian Clown Company. The problem that happened that affected both Mr. Pickles and the Canadian Clown Company is that there was a very large grove of trees that were on the Pickle family farm, but were dangerously leaning over the creek into the Canadian Clown Camp. And Mr. Pickles couldn't climb because he's a pickle, and since the Canadian Clown's feet had grown so large they couldn't climb trees either, so both sides ignored the problem. But when little Colonel was up there and he saw how dangerous it was, he gathered the pet detective team, Mr. Pickles and the Canadian Clowns, and told them this is very dangerous, and they all decided that the trees needed to come down. As good fortune would have it, both Charlie and Ruger both worked a couple of summers as lumberjacks, and they grabbed their lumberjack gear and headed to Dill City, Idaho to help with the dangerous leaning trees. So Ruger and Charlie both put on their logging hats and gear and picked out the safest and easiest trees first. The first trees they had to cut the tops off of first before they could cut down the trees. So putting on their climbing equipment, they climbed way up close to the top and with their chainsaws topped off the trees. So one after another, they climbed the trees and topped the trees. And then they cut the trees down that were unsafe. When on the ground, the Canadian Clowns, Mr. Pickles, and the pet detective team cleaned up all the brush and trees that were cut down. And after all the work together for a few days and eating lunch together, they couldn't remember why they even became rivals. And actually they were friends, sort of brothers in clownship. Ruger and Charlie finally were down to the two largest and most dangerous trees. Bailey and Colonel did all the math calculations and came up with the numbers that shown that if Ruger and Charlie fell both the trees in the precise directions and at the same time the trees would fall all the way across the creek, it would make a new bridge for the Canadian Clown Company. The old bridge had been washed away by a huge storm that came through about 10 years ago. Now Ruger and Charlie measured and marked the trees where Colonel and Bailey said to. They waited for the wind to calm down because a storm was on its way. And soon the wind calmed down enough for Charlie and Ruger to start their chainsaws and start cutting at the exact same time. From Colonel and Bailey's calculations, the trees would have to fall exactly at the same time if they were to land in the correct position and not hit any buildings and land across the creek. The trees were so large that when Charlie and Ruger started cutting, they couldn't hear or see each other because of the noise of the chainsaws, and the trees were so big. To help out, Samuel and Isaac, the twin red foxes, were fluent in sign language. They learned this because when they were little pups, their grandma could not hear, and they learned sign language so they could speak to their grandma. So Samuel and Isaac stood next to Charlie and Ruger and would talk to each other through sign language, giving Charlie and Ruger thumbs up or thumbs down to either speed up or slow down the cutting to ensure that both trees would fall at the same time. Soon both trees started to fall, slowly at first, making a loud popping and cracking noises. And the farther they fell, the faster they got, making a loud swoosh before a big crash when they hit the ground. And at first, with all the dust in the air, it was impossible to see anything. Then, slowly, as the dust settled, everyone on both sides of the creek could see each other, and that the trees landed perfectly, just as Bailey and Colonel had calculated. Now Mr. Pickles, the Canadian Clown Company, and the pet detective team got right to work, cutting trees in the wood to make the bridge complete. And when they finished, they had a beautiful wooden tree bridge that would constantly keep sprouting new limbs and growth, quickly became a tourist spot, and now Mr. Pickles and the Canadian Clown Company decided to work together. Mr. Pickles started greeting people at the Clown Bridge, making balloon hats and animals for children. However, Mr. Pickles was not very good at tying balloons and making hats and animals, but he was very entertaining. So to help get it all started, Samuel and Isaac, both who worked for a circus company in Eastern Europe, both were very accomplished at tying balloons. And in a short amount of time, they were able to teach Mr. Pickle some balloon tricks to help improve his balloon tying skills. Mr. Pickles also put on shows telling stories about his career as a clown, a carrot thrower, a music producer. While the Canadian Clowns utilized the bridge, they dressed up in horse costumes, did pretend jousting on the bridge with jousting spears made by Mr. Pickles out of balloons. And this all together brought both little towns back to life. With the team's help no longer needed, Pepe couldn't help resist just one more time on the stage with the village pets singing SPCA, with everyone joining in. And he also had to do his one little country hit he did, What Did I Say? Now Charlie says hit that like and subscribe buttons. And also ring that notification bell. Little Colonel says, hey, stop clowning around, leave a comment. And don't be selfish. Share this episode. It's free. And we'll see you next time on the adventures of the Pet Detectives.